Yesterday, we gave you the assignment to chant the best rounds you've ever chanted, to make the effort to chant the best rounds you've ever chanted. So what we normally do on the day after is we share with one another the answers to these questions, kind of do an evaluation of how it went, what went well, what didn't go well, what we can do to improve, and you're going to give yourself a score on today's japa. Remember yesterday we gave ourselves scores, 1 to 10, so you can score today's japa in comparison to how your japa has been. You can give yourself a score. And then, how do you feel? How did you feel? How can you improve? What realizations did you have? So this you're going to share with your partner. So one partner will start, and you can go through all of these. Or if you like, you can change. You can each do the first question, and then you can each do the second question. There's any way you want to do it. Now, one thing that I want to mention is that for some of you, I'm sure not everything went well today. So if something didn't go well, don't be afraid to not share that. That's part of the process of improving. I mean, occasionally, even though we're making an effort to chant well, some devotees don't have good japa days, even though they're trying. So if things didn't go well, that's fine. You just share that, and then you share how you can improve. And that's also beneficial. So it's not that you only share the good, but you also share the bad. Okay? So, in the back, you're going to need a partner. So the next person who comes in the door, you can grab them and make them your partner. Okay? So does anyone have any questions on what we're doing? You're not writing this down, but you're sharing this with your partner. I mean, you can write it down later if you want, but the exercise is to share the answers to these questions with your partner. Okay? What we're going to do now is we're going to ask you to share. And I don't want you to just share the good. If anyone had a difficult time, they can share the bad, and then we can try to help you with the bad. So, of course, we like to hear the good, but anything you wish to share about this morning's japa, you're welcome to share. The good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. Yeah. So who would like to go first? And we need a Garuda. Microphone carrier. That mic works.
Others?
Oh, I think it works. Yeah.
Two.
Yes, Arthur.
Hare Krishna. So, one realization that I got is I was not aware of, yesterday you were saying about focus on the sound inside and outside as well, externally. So I was trying to be aware just of the vibrations in the vocal cords and on the lips. So now, and when I chanted like Rama Rama, I was able to taste that on the lips. So I had that experience.
And that helped you become more fixed?
Because I was not even aware how many rounds do I have left like that.
Yeah. It's interesting how if you feel the vibration, it tends to ground you in the present. What? Because we have to bring ourselves back to it. Yeah, it requires practice, time. I think also, she's asking why it doesn't stay, because I think for many of us, we're so used to allowing our mind to wander when we chant that it's become a habit. And so we're trying to break the habit. And we're trying to replace it with a new habit. So whenever you're trying to break a habit, even when you do what you should be doing, then the old habit tends to creep up. So a Japa workshop is meant to learn new habits, but then it takes some time. And if you get a little slack, the old habits again become a little stronger. So just be patient and keep making the effort to replace the old habits with new habits. It's a constant effort until you'll come to a certain point and you'll see it'll become more effortless. For example, I think many of you may have the experience that sometimes when you begin chanting, it takes you some time to settle into your japa, so maybe you're not focused right away, but maybe after a number of rounds you're more focused. And as you practice better habits, you will eventually be able to come to the point where when you begin your japa, you'll be completely present right from the beginning. So that's something new for many of us. Burijan Prabhu wrote in one book, he said he didn't even hear the mantra for 2 years. He chanted japa for 2 years, and after 2 years, he finally heard it. So we're dealing with lifetimes of conditioning, and then we're also dealing with a lot of poor japa habits, because most of us were never told how to chant. Just said, just chant and hear. That was about it. And so naturally we're used to the mind wandering. So we have to diligently, what? Yeah, constant as much as, but I believe and I think what we spoke about yesterday, if we need to get more away from the mechanics of it and more into the heart, because if you just stick on the mechanics, then it's like, well, maybe today you're feeling more sattva gun, so you're more peaceful, but the next day you had a rough day and now your mind's disturbed and you can't focus. So if you go more into the heart of chanting, which is prayer, it becomes easier to focus. Just as I was giving the example, when the relationship is good, conversation is good, listening is good. So in the same way, when we're more connected in the idea this is a relationship, we rely less on the mechanics, right? So, like in the example that he's giving, if you think of someone you love, you kind of feel some emotional response to just thinking about them. So in the same way, as you become more involved in chanting, you naturally will feel Krishna's presence more. To the point, then you'll fully experience it and fully realize it. So I'm of the strong conviction that if we get too mechanistic, then one day it's good, one day it's bad, and it becomes a little artificial. Because in bhakti, everything depends ultimately on Krishna's mercy, right? So that's really what we're looking for. But we want to look at it in terms of developing our desire to be connected. For example, when you're chanting, if you have a need, like a problem, so you have a really big problem and you really need Krishna to help, it's likely at that point your chanting will be more powerful and more heartfelt, because right now you really need Krishna. So japa should be like that always, because we always need Krishna's mercy. We just don't always think we do. And then we get back into the consciousness of, I just have to finish 16 rounds, and then we lose connection with what we're praying for and why we're praying. So as long as we're connected with what we're praying for, why we're praying for, these other things we're talking about will naturally come. If you're not feeling so much in your heart at that moment, these other techniques can awaken that. We can just think, okay, what is my obstacle right now? Or what is my whole condition in this world? How many years do I have to live? I could meet Krishna in 20 years if I chant nicely. And then we kind of bring all those thoughts, and it activates us to want to chant more sincerely. And that's also why we need the right environment. Like, let's say you're a young girl, and your parents are well, this doesn't work so good for Indians, but they have dating services, right? So you go and you meet somebody. So let's say you meet somebody and the relationship is good. So the man says, let's go to this special restaurant. So what's the restaurant like? Nice music, candles on the table, flowers on the table, it's dark, it's a certain decor. Because it's creating an ambience, an atmosphere, which is, quote unquote, good for romance. right? If it's really getting serious, then you don't invite a woman to McDonald's, even if they have veggie burgers. It's not the right ambience, right? For romance. That's the wrong atmosphere. So, in the same way, there are certain atmospheres which are conducive to chanting japa. And to go more into the consciousness that I'm talking about, the prayer, if you're on a train or a bus, it's a little harder to get in that mood because there's so many other things going on. It's just not so conducive. So that also may be a reason that you find kind of slipping back into the mind that's just wandering. You have to create the right ambience that supports that kind of mood, which is why I stress so much chanting before your day begins, before you do anything else, because the early morning is the right ambience, and that is the time you can talk to Krishna. And as we said yesterday, your chanting is a discussion, it's a conversation with Krishna where you're asking for mercy, you're asking to get closer, you're asking for so many things. So if you are more in that mood of asking, then you won't have to worry about your mind. It's when you get out of that mood of prayer, then your mind starts thinking, what am I going to do later, etc., or the problems you have to deal with, or any number of things. So, real japa, good japa, is not even that you're thinking about service. It's you're thinking about your relation with Krishna and how to get closer, and you're praying. You know, I was once talking to Borijan, and I said, what is your understanding of this Mahaprabhu says that if you're humble, you can chant 24 hours a day. So in that discussion, he was saying that part of the concept of humility is that you're depending on Krishna and you need his help. So he said, if you're actually in that mode or in the consciousness that Krishna, I need your help, then you would always chant because you always need help. Right? So when we're chanting japa, like in every temple after an hour and a half, the energy goes down a little bit. Devotees start standing up, walking around, some have service. You can feel a shift in energy. But if you're praying, the energy should never weaken because you always need Krishna's help. So 16 rounds, 32, 64, it should be that same intensity because I'm always dependent on his mercy. And I should always be asking for it. So if you enter japa more in that mood, Srinadapi Sunichena, I need your mercy. Hare Krishna, give it to me. Without your mercy, I can't be Krishna conscious. You'll be better. And as we advance, we want the mercy more. We become more needy in a spiritual sense. So the more needy you become spiritually, the more your chanting is endowed with power. That's why when a person begins Krishna consciousness and you ask him to chant, you'll see after 3 or 4 rounds, they have a really hard time. Because their need is not very strong and their mind is not used to being controlled. Right? So it's not generally, you don't find somebody just comes to the temple, you show them how to chant, and they sit down and chant 16 very intense rounds. That's rare. It's even rare for us, isn't it? But to speak of a new person, usually with new people you find after 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 maximum, they get bored. Because they see it as some kind of mechanical process. Just a mantra and you're just chanting it. It's meditation. It's like any other kind of meditation. Just meditate on a candle. Well, that's boring. Meditate on a wall. That's boring. How long can you do it? I mean, you can force yourself. But there's no juice. There's no ruchi. There's no rasa. Right? So, the more you're hungry for Krishna, the more your chanting is intense. And the more your meditation is intense. You know, just like a little child. The more they want something, the more intense they are about getting it. So it's the same with us. The more we want Krishna consciousness, the more our chanting becomes intense and focused. And then you'll find you'll have less problem with your mind wandering. Because you're so focused on what you want. I really need Krishna's mercy. We all need Krishna's mercy. But we all don't realize it to the same degree. And, you know, sometimes we're chanting and it's like, everything's okay. Hare Krishna, this is nice, Hare Krishna, blissful, you know. But it should be more what's my necessity. Just like, I'll give you an example. If you read the songs, especially Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but other acharyas, they express a very negative sense that I'm without Krishna, or I'm without humility, or I'm without good qualities. But really what they're expressing is, if you flip it around, it's expressing that I want Krishna, I want you. If you just retranslated that, I have no humility. It really retranslated means, Krishna, I need you. I'm far from you and I want you. Every one of those negatives is just saying, Krishna, I want you, I need you. So the more you're feeling in the negative of a lack of Krishna consciousness, the more that should generate the positive in terms of prayer. So if you look at all your lackings, you turn them around, they're all prayers. Krishna, I don't have any good qualities. Krishna, I don't have any this, I don't have any that. Please help me. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Right? So that's why the acharyas seem in their prayers to be so negative. And we look at them and we think, this looks like, if I was thinking like this, I would have to go to a psychotherapist. There would be something seriously wrong with me. That's what it looks like. It looks like, what's wrong here? This is not healthy. But from the spiritual sense, it's very healthy. It's a strong hankering. I don't have any this, I don't have any that, I have all these bad qualities. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. It's just empowering the devotee to beg Krishna, because I'm lacking, I need you to fill up the gap. Right? So that's what devotee's feeling when he's saying that. He's not depressed when Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, I'm low, or any Krishnadas Kaviraj says, I'm lower than a worm in stool. He's not feeling depressed. Right? If I say that, it would be a symptom of depression. How do you feel? I feel like a worm. Oh, okay, well, let's take you to the mental hospital now. This is like serious problem. You feel as low as a worm? That's not healthy. But when Krishnadas Kaviraj says, I feel low as a worm, it's just, that means, Krishna, Krishna, I want you, I need you. I'm so far from you. I feel everyone's so much better than me. I'm so low. But that just means, that's a manifestation of his very intense desire. It's really a manifestation of his love of Krishna, ultimately. So, if we're chanting and we go into the japa dead zone, okay, I promised you a picture of the dead zone. I think I have it on here. No, I definitely have it on the Spanish version. Hold on. You want to see it? Let me find it first. I don't know if I have it on. I have to find the Spanish version, because I definitely have it on the Spanish version. You will like this. It will wake you up. I'm going to have to replug my... I have a lot of photos on this version. Okay, here it is. Let me see if I can plug this in. This is the La Zona Muerta de Japa. That's the dead zone. You ever feel like that? So what's going on when you feel like this? You're not really chanting Hare Krishna. It's just the material sound. But there's no heart connection, right? Yes? Yeah. So, when we enter the japa dead zone, then we should understand that this whole mode of prayer, that Krishna, I need your mercy, we've lost it, and we've just gone into this, it's just a mantra. You know, chant a mantra and feel peaceful. You know, and a mantra is not connected with any person or any desire to be closer to that person. It's just a mantra, you know. I met a guru and got a mantra, and I sit down and I chant it for 5 minutes. Maybe I'll make a lot of money with this mantra. Maybe, I'll become healthy. It's like that. It's impersonal. So, Krishna consciousness, the chanting is personal, right? And as we said yesterday, Prabhupada said, please accept me, is one of the meanings of the mantra. Oh, Krishna, please accept me. So that I feel this distance, and chanting is meant to bridge that gap. So when you feel that, then this whole problem with the mind and lack of taste and so forth is minimized. And then as you advance, it increases. This intensity increases. And so when you're in this consciousness, japa is a very important part of your day, because that's the part of your day when you're just begging Krishna. Right now, I was here last October something. I was here a year ago in Champati, and Maharaj Radhanath Swami was there. And I always like to chant in the same room with him, because when he's chanting, just by looking at him, this is what you see, right? That it's just connection. I want to connect with Krishna. I want to be empowered by Krishna. I'm lacking, and Krishna, I need you. And this is a very important part of his day. You can see that, right? And it's meant to be a very important part, the most important part of all of our days, because this is the time of day when we go to Krishna and say, okay, I need my breakfast. I'm asking you for breakfast. Can you serve me something really good? Because I really need a good breakfast in my spiritual life. So we're begging. We're just beggars. We're begging. We're pleading. That's the mood. And so when you get into that mood, you click into that, then japa goes, it's on a different level now. So then there's not so much of this struggle with the mind, and because now you're there. Your heart is there. You're in the right consciousness. And then it flows. And if you get out of that consciousness, kind of hammer yourself back, remind yourself what japa is, pray a little bit, and try to enter that mode. So who else wants to share? Or did somebody... Yes. We'll leave it to Rohini. Will choose who to give the mic to.
Hare Krishna. Today's chanting was better in the sense that, as you suggested, I prayed to Krishna to feel his presence. And the thoughts were, I think, 90% less.
90% less thoughts, yeah.
Yes.
And
so
you were just praying. You were just trying to feel. Yeah.
I prayed, my thoughts were less, but I still couldn't get the feeling.
Yeah, okay. Couldn't get the feeling. So now here's an important point. That ultimately, when we're chanting, we want to chant for Krishna's pleasure. And that we want to be in the mood that if he gives us any taste, that's his gift. But I want to chant for his pleasure, whether I get a taste or not. And then you'll get a taste at that point. At that point when you stop, because you see, bhakti means, Bhakti Siddhanta said, a devotee cannot perceive any happiness outside of what gives pleasure to Krishna. He doesn't perceive personal happiness outside of giving pleasure to Krishna. There's no feeling of I'm going to be happy unless it gives Krishna pleasure. So if you chant japa in the mood that I'm just doing this to please Guru and Krishna, and I'm praying as you were doing today, and I'm feeling, and as much as I can the vibration, and feeling Krishna's coming to me in his holy name, how wonderful that is, and just appreciating, then do it in that mood. You've moved out of the position of being enjoyer to being servant. And that's the platform on which you'll begin to taste. And if you don't taste, sometimes Krishna's testing you because he wants to see, oh, I'm not going to give her any taste today. What's she going to do? Go to sleep, put her beads down, do something else, go eat something in the middle of japa? Sometimes Krishna he's watching you chant, and he's saying, no, I'm not going to give that today. But let's see what she does. So you can think like that. So you put yourself as the enjoyed, the ashraya. Krishna's the vishaya, the enjoyer. So I'm chanting, I'm the ashraya. Krishna's the vishaya, he's the enjoyer. I'm chanting to please him. I'm not chanting to get pleasure or peace or happiness. That's all gyan. Yogis, they do that. Shanti, shanti. They want peace. We just want to make Krishna happy. That's the goal of the bhakta. So if you chant in that consciousness, that's actually how you get the taste. It's a byproduct. Just like we say in our Grihastha seminar, we say that the purpose of marriage is not to be happy. The purpose of marriage is to be holy, and when you become holy, you become happy as a byproduct. So everybody has it wrong. Oh, let's get married so we'll make one another happy. It doesn't work. Let's get married so together we can become Krishna conscious, and then we become happy as a byproduct. See, so it's the same with chanting. The purpose of chanting is to purify our hearts, to please Krishna, follow the order of the Guru. It's a seva. Right? One of the 9 processes is chanting. So chanting is a service. It's a seva. Sometimes devotees don't think it's can you do some seva, Prabhu? No, I'm chanting. I can't do any seva. Well, chanting is a seva also. Right? So we see it as a service. So I'm happy, I'm not happy. I'll do it to please Krishna. And if you put that affection in there to do it to please Krishna, then you get to experience the very affection that you're putting in there. So if you put then it's impossible not to feel anything because you put devotion into it, and you'll feel the devotion you put into it. So you have to feel something when you put devotion into it. Just like women, when they see little children, something comes over them. It's a chemical thing, right? Much more than men. Sometimes men, it's just like they smile, but then it's over, you know. But with women, when they see children, there's such a deeper connection that they feel a lot more affection. So because you're feeling this affection for the children, kind of a motherly affection, right? The child feels it, but you also feel it, right? So the same way, when you put devotion into your chanting, you get to feel the devotion. And I was saying yesterday, I don't know if you picked up on this, but I was saying, if we don't feel it, how will Krishna feel it? Just like when I feel something and I express it, you'll feel what I'm feeling. But if I express it and I don't feel it, you won't feel it. It's just words, right? So it's the same when we're chanting. If I'm feeling this necessity to advance, and I'm expressing that mood and feeling through the holy name, Krishna also feels it. So if you just add more devotion to your chanting, then you don't have to worry about feeling, because immediately you'll feel your own bhakti. And if you want some greater taste, then just be in that mood of I'm ashraya and Krishna's vishaya, I'm chanting for his pleasure. It'll come. And if it doesn't come, that's okay. Right? Because we're happy serving Krishna. That's a higher stage of bhakti. See, a higher stage of bhakti is happiness or distress you're not so conscious of it. You're only conscious, is this giving pleasure to Krishna, my Guru? Right? But in terms of your personal happiness, it's not your motive, so you don't really notice. Is this making me happy or not? Is this making me happy? Is this making me distressed? You don't notice it. Just like, let's say, your child's having a birthday. So you're making all these arrangements. You don't really notice that you're going through all kinds of difficulties to make all these arrangements, to invite people, to cook, get, organized so much. Because it's your daughter's birthday. Or let's talk about wedding. Wedding is a complicated thing. But you don't really notice all the difficulties because the wedding's so important. Right? So it's that way in devotional service. Because there's so much desire to please Krishna, you don't notice so much the difficulties. Like people look at my schedule and they go, oh, you've been traveling a lot, you must be tired. And I say, I don't know if I'm tired. Are you tired? I don't know. Because I realize that when I'm thinking about service, I don't really think about, am I tired, am I happy, am I hungry, am I distressed? I don't notice it so much. If I stop all that, then I'll start to notice it more. People always write me emails because I'm traveling a lot, and I have to take these overnight flights, and they're saying, so they say, "How are you, Prabhu? Have you got enough rest yet?" And I say, "I don't know. I don't know. Are you tired? I'm not sure." So So we want to get to that point in devotional service where this is all about Krishna's pleasure. I don't even know. Are you happy? I don't know if I'm happy or not. I don't think about it. I just think, well, what does Krishna want? Just like a mother. Are you happy? I don't know. I just take care of my kids. You don't have time to think, are you happy or not? So, magnify that a few million times, and that's bhakti. Right? So, who else would like to share? Have somebody here.
Yes, it was a really great day that at least felt that when chanting, feel the sound vibration inside, outside, feeling was there. And so...
Can you speak a little slower? I didn't understand exactly what you said.
Okay. So, when we started chanting, it was really feeling that there is sound vibration inside and outside, feeling was there.
Oh, okay.
And thought, of course, great extent means it almost stop, means like mind, a feeling that there is no mind, something like that. So this way it is good. But what I felt in the middle of the hour, like 6, 7 and 8, 3 rounds chanting, feel sleepy.
Oh, you felt sleepy.
So that it is less sleeping the night, or how it influenced by those things. Okay. What is that?
All right, so he's asking, it was going well, but then he felt sleepy. So does that mean?
So after 9 up, then okay. Then I no sleepy.
6 to 9 was the difficult japa. Yeah.
6 to 9. Yeah.
Well, we'll answer the question as a general question. Is if we're feeling sleepy, does it mean we're tired, or does it mean we're not chanting well?
I felt that I'm confused a little bit, because see, the confused means sometimes able to chant, but this maybe also because of less sleeping, like night I slept only 4.5 hours.
Yeah, that's
so
probably,
that also possible that it is because of. So I have to experiment for 1 week, sleeping 6 hours or something like that.
If you only sleep 4.5 hours and you sit down and chant, it's more of a challenge to stay awake, unless you're like on the platform of Baba. So I would say until you come to Baba, you're probably going to need a little more rest. Yeah, I mean, if you even ruchi, at the stage of ruchi, if you're getting a very strong taste for the holy name, I don't think you'll fall asleep, even if you don't sleep at all. But for us, if we don't get enough rest, because until we come to that stage where it's an emotional experience to chant, then we need sufficient rest for the mind to be alert. So I try to avoid chanting when I'm extremely tired, because I can't focus. I just focus on how tired I am, and then I end up falling asleep. But I have experienced also that when my chanting is better, it tends to wake me up. So I think, if you're extremely tired because of several days of lack of rest, it's going to affect your japa. If it's just you're a little tired and you're getting drowsy, then I would say, as you improve your chanting, you'll stay awake. It's just you'll become excited about japa. It's like something it's like it's so important for you. You don't want to fall asleep. Like let's say there's a really interesting class and you're tired. You really want to stay awake to hear it. So japa is something like that. As it becomes more stimulating, it keeps us awake. So both things are true.
Well, this contradictory comes because after 9th round chanting was good, not feeling sleepy. So this
maybe you got some more ruchi. Ruchi Shakti kept you awake. Yeah. Take it as a general principle that you will notice that as you improve your chanting, you will find yourself rarely falling asleep when you chant. Who else would like to share? Yeah, yes. Too many days of not enough rest, and then it's not good for japa. Here is better, yeah. Here we have no responsibilities, so I think everyone should move here, sell their homes, move here, and you can. Okay, now I'm just going to say something. Before you share, I want to say something because you brought up a good point. That I'll let you know what ISKCON was like when I joined. I'll stand up so you can see me. When I joined ISKCON, in the temple I joined, I think there were 2 grihastas, and they were both full-time devotees. They lived in apartments, and then the rest were brahmacharis, brahmacharinis, maybe about 15 of us. That was kind of standard. And the grihastas were just preachers, and they were supported by the temple. And that went on for quite a few years. And the grihastas, most of them didn't have any cars. They had 1 room with no furniture. That's how we lived. But we were happy. Now, we were in our 20s, so it was easy for us, right? And then as we grew and lives became more complicated with children and amenities and cars and furniture and flats, then the temple couldn't support us, and we required money. And so we entered into the world and worked 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. And it became much more of a challenge to be Krishna conscious. So in the Bhagavatam, in a purport, I don't know if you're aware of this, Prabhupada writes, one should not work more than 8 hours a day. When I was young, in America, my father worked 8 hours a day, and my mother didn't work, and we had more money than we needed. Everyone in the neighborhood was the same situation. Even the guy who worked in a factory, he could buy a house. He just worked as an assembly line for a motor car company, and he could actually own a house. Not such a nice house, but by today's standard, that house I have a friend, 1950, his father bought a house for $5,000. I guarantee you today that house in LA is worth about $650,000. My father bought his house for $50,000. And I went back to the neighborhood on a Japa walk, because it's about a 20-minute walk from the LA temple. And there was a house on that block for sale for $850,000. So inflation has, skyrocketed. And it's become very difficult to live. So as our lives become more complicated, it interferes with our sadhana. So the idea is that because chanting is so important and sadhana is so important, we want to regulate our lives in a way that our lives don't get too complicated. So we have to be conscious of that, because every choice we make can complicate or simplify our life. Now, Prabhupada spoke a lot about what's going on here, self-sufficiency, people living off the land, like what we might think, oh, that's what my great-grandparents did, but now we're modern and everything's better. When I fly into Bombay, I don't think everything's better. I can't imagine anything getting worse than cities in India. And I joke with the devotees. I said, 100 years ago, do you think people were sitting around and they were planning that cities would look like this? Of course not. Nobody would plan a city like that, to put so many people in one place. So this is what we've created. So Prabhupada talked a lot about life like this. So this is also a serious consideration for many of us at some point in our life, to be able to live this way, because then we can be fully engaged in Krishna consciousness. So we want to do the best with our lives as they are, but there's got to be some limitations, right? We have to simplify sufficiently so that our sadhana doesn't get affected. Otherwise, as I said yesterday, you learn all these things, but you don't have the environment to practice because you're too busy, or you're too, a lot of people work, and their work is exhausting, and they come home, and they need to sleep more than they would if they lived out here where they'd be inspired. So they find themselves sleeping 8 hours, and that's just enough to get up and get ready and go to work, whereas if they slept 6, they could have chanted their rounds, but they're too burned out. So these are all realities we have to deal with, which is why so many of the men are out here who could have been successful materially, but they opted not to, knowing that that was going to be the challenge, and they want to be Krishna conscious. So their thinking shouldn't be that much different from our thinking. as grihastas and dealing with the world, we should still think in the same way, how to minimize the complexities of life. That's very important, because if it gets too complicated, and even you want to be Krishna conscious, it's like you don't have the time. Or you have the time, but you don't have the energy, because your work has burnt you out. You know, you're driving an hour, it takes you an hour and a half to go to work, right? Your office is 3 miles from where you live, it just takes you an hour and a half to get there, right? Or maybe if it's 10 miles, it takes you an hour and a half, right? I was in Buenos Aires, Argentina, we went on a program, right? It took us 45 minutes to get back from the program at 10 o'clock at night, but at 5 when we left, it took us 3.5 hours. That city is like, it's like Mumbai. It just goes and goes and goes. It's horrible. And the air, we're breathing this horrible air. And it's a mess. And so Prabhupada spoke a lot against it. He didn't like it. He didn't think that was, he would say things like, this is just draining human energy. You know, industry. He said something so amazing. He was talking on this topic and he said, look, if you don't have furniture, then you don't need a factory to make furniture. You can just sit on the ground. And that eliminates all the furniture factories in the world. Because he didn't like industrialization, because he saw it had made a few people rich, it had made a lot of people work in very hellish environments. He didn't like it. He liked this, you know, work your land, work your cows, do your craft. That's what he liked. So he said, why do you need chairs? You can sit on the floor. And that sounds kind of radical, it sounds kind of fanatic, but he was serious. Because he really felt industrialization is just pulling the life out of people. Right? So every convenience we have, you need an industry to make it. You don't need an industry to make this. Your clothes. What do you really need? A roof, some clothes, and some food. Right? That was Prabhupada's program. So yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Actually, there was a good improvement I can find today's chanting comparatively in all these days. So in that, the internal and external vibration, that feeling was there. I could observe. Nice. Yeah. So the thing is, Prabhuji, I feel my worries. It took 2 hours 40 minutes to complete all the 6 rounds. 16 rounds. Yes. How to tackle this?
How to deal with that? 2 hours and you said take you 2 hours and 40 minutes to complete 16 rounds.
Yeah, 10 minutes per round.
But you felt inspired.
Yeah, it's very good.
Okay, so don't worry about it at this point. Chanting good rounds is what we're looking for. Whether it's 2 hours or 3 hours. Of course, if you don't have the time, that's a problem. But if you have the time, don't worry about it. And I will tell you a story. There was a devotee, it took him all day to chant his rounds. Seriously. He joined ISKCON probably in 1969. And a lot of the people joining ISKCON were taking drugs. And if you took too much drugs, you would get what we called spaced out. What we call spaced out here is, like you leave your keys, and your keys are in your hand, and you say, "Have you seen my keys?" That's spaced out, right? That's normal. People do that, right? Where are my glasses, Prabhu? You're wearing them. Oh, okay. But the original word spaced out came from people who were taking drugs. They would take so many drugs they couldn't concentrate on anything. Their mind was like jelly. They just had no focus. So this devotee came from that background. And he'd chant like one mantra, and then he would just stop chanting and look around, and he'd chant another mantra. Then halfway through the third mantra, he'd stop chanting, look around. It actually took him all day. So the temple president didn't know what to do, and he wrote Prabhupada and said, "Can we have this devotee in the temple? He doesn't do any service because it takes him all day." And Prabhupada said, "Then let him chant all day." I think Prabhupada knew by doing that he would get better, but that's the process that Prabhupada gives us, 16 rounds. So he was willing to let this devotee do no service if it took him all day to chant his rounds. Chanting his rounds is that important. So quality is the most important. And if you only have 2 hours a day because of work and other responsibilities, then you're going to have to step it up, of course. But I wouldn't be concerned that you're chanting slow. As I said yesterday, a lot of devotees chant more slowly when they're relishing. Not everybody, but some. It's just, they don't feel the need to get it over as you did before. Oh no, 16 rounds, here we go again. Ah! I have a picture for that one. You want to see it? This picture is kind of funny. Whoops. That's the, when you put your hand in your bead bag in the morning and you go, here we go again, oh no. I've got to chant 16 rounds again. So when you're in that mood, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, right? But you're relishing, it's more like Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Isn't it? So you may slow down. So I would say it's actually a good sign, not a bad sign. But if you don't have time because of other responsibilities, then it's a problem. But it's a good problem. Who else would like to share? Where don't you share? The Punite in the back. I want him to share. Can you stand up? He was telling me he had some really good japa. So I think it'd be inspiring to hear from you.
Prabhuji, it was one of the best japa day in my life.
Haribo! Jai.
I started chanting around 5 o'clock. Initial 6 rounds I started chanting in unison with Prabhupada's stone. And I could feel how Prabhupada was chanting, the mood Prabhupada was in. Because yesterday we analyzed it so much. So it really helped me. 6 rounds went very nicely. But afterwards I was feeling little bored. But still I tried to concentrate. I tried to pray. I was thinking the need for Krishna's mercy. And in this way I was able to focus better. And it went nicely. I completed my rounds in 2 hours. I was checking the time. And everything was very nice. The atmosphere over here is very nice. The atmosphere is vibrant and it is very conducive. So I was thinking whether I would be able to chant the same in my place and in stressful condition. So that is the thing.
You have to. Anyway, how did you feel? I
felt very nice. I was able to focus better.
So feeling very nice in Krishna consciousness is very important. So my advice to you and to all of us here today, create a proper environment in which you can chant undisturbed and get absorbed. Very important. I can't stress this enough. The environment in which you chant is going to affect the quality of your chanting. So that environment means the ideal environment is an environment where nothing else is going on that would distract you. Right? And the more, because I have experience, you might think I'm a fanatic, but I think my experience illustrates this point really well. Because of my teaching Japa workshops, and because my philosophy is don't teach it if you don't do it, it's forced me to improve my japa. So I've become very sensitive to environment. So when I'm chanting my rounds, especially when I'm doing well chanting, even if someone in my house just gets up and walks in the kitchen and gets water, it distracts me. I lose my focus. You might think, what's wrong with you, Mahatma? Don't you know how to focus? But the point is, anything that's not related to japa becomes a distraction. So What to speak of a bus, an airplane, an airport. It's very, very difficult. You always want to find some corner and hide. Right? And Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the Harinam Chintamani, he gave an example. He said, if it's necessary, put a blanket over your head, and meaning you won't see anything. And then we learned that many of the sadhus lived in caves, because caves were either underground or in some way removed from the mass of people. So it was a perfect place to chant. Anyone ever chant in a cave before? You have that experience? It's amazing, isn't it? It's the vibrations, it's just echoing around you. But you really understand by going in a cave why they went in caves, because it's an ideal environment. So everybody needs their cave. So one of the things that I alluded to yesterday with the idea of the curtain, close the curtain on your life, it goes along with the cave, that we all need a cave. And we call this cave where we chant, we call it a sacred space, or in Hindi, Pavitra Stan. I had my workshop translated in Hindi, then I said, where is sacred space? They said, Pavitra Stan. Is that good? Pavitra Stan? So a sacred place is just an environment that is conducive. And your sacred place can change depending on where you are, right? So, and ironically, one of the worst places to chant is at the Hare Krishna temple on a festival day. Because everybody wants to talk, because you don't see everybody. Now you finally see everybody, everyone you haven't seen for years. So when it comes time to chant japa, how you been? Haven't seen you. Your whole japa is eaten up sometimes. But hi, how you doing? Right? So even in that environment, you might need to create a sacred space, which is, take a little walk somewhere, away from the temple, or, you know what I'm saying? It's like, so it's a dynamic thing. Your sacred space may always have to change as you move around temple to temple chanting. So it's really important, because you don't want to create an environment which is working against you. And then you'll say, well, I tried to improve my chanting, but I'm not getting a taste, this and that, because you're being distracted. Right? Now, you want to do this as far as is possible for you. We all are in different situations. If you have 12 children, okay, you probably won't have a sacred space for another 10 years. You don't even try. Right? It's like, if you have 12 children, don't even try to keep your house in order. It's a waste of time. Right? It's impossible. Why would you? You can't. Right before I came here, I was in Washington, D.C., and I was staying with some devotees. And I walked in their house. Everything was in its place. And in 3 seconds, when I walked in and looked at the house, I said, they don't have any children. That was the first impression I got. Because if you have children, nothing's in its place. And when you go into a home where people don't have children, immediately you know, there's no children here. Everything's orderly. Right? So there may be certain situations in certain parts of your life where your sacred space will be slightly compromised. You can't do anything about it. But the general principle is try to find the ideal situation, as ideal as you can make it. Sometimes I call the sacred space your japa house. Yesterday I gave the example of pulling the curtain on your life. Just turn your life off when you're chanting. And along with that example, I don't know if you remember, but I said, well, you could look at your life like a house. This is my life, and everything in my life. I need to walk out of that house to chant japa, so I can go into my japa house, my japa cave, my bhajan kutir. So in our own internal consciousness, we also have a sacred space within us, not just outside of us, but it's also within us. Because yesterday when we said close the curtain on your life when you chant japa, that's how you create an internal sacred space. So external and internal, they work together. So don't just think if you create an external sacred space, you'll have an internal, because you may not. You still may be occupied internally with your life. So you want to walk out of your life, walk out of the house of your life, and walk into your bhajan kutir when you chant. which is a place within your consciousness where you've turned the lights off on your life, you've walked out, and now you can chant. And if we don't do that, then while we're chanting, we're still occupied in our life. When a pure devotee chants, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, sometimes you see him crying and sometimes you see him laughing. So why is he crying and why is he laughing? He said because he's seeing Krishna's pastimes. And while he's seeing the pastimes, Krishna, you know, he's a funny guy, right? Does funny things. You know, like gopis are carrying pots and he goes, tick, cracks the pot and all the ghee, you know, falls all over them. He does funny things like that, right? Yes? So, but why is he crying? Because he's seeing Krishna leave. He's watching the pastimes and he's seeing Krishna leave. And he's crying. Maybe Krishna's going back home from herding the cows or he's leaving somewhere. So this indicates when a devotee's chanting the holy name, he's there with Krishna and Leela. So if we are in our home while we're chanting, then we're there in our Leela. And we're meditating on our Leela. What's my Leela? Well, this is what I have to do today, so I'm meditating on my Leela. And our Leela, of course, is not as exciting as Krishna's Leela. Generally, his is a little more interesting and definitely more purifying. Right? So this is where we're supposed to be absorbed, not in our Leela, but in Krishna Leela. Yes? So you want to kind of walk out of your house internally. Then you want to kind of walk into your cave, and that's where you can be with Krishna, opening up, meditating on him, and expressing your heart. So that's a very important principle, and it's created in your own internal virtual world. You have to do that. Yesterday we talked about the man on the airplane reading the newspaper, right? In samadhi. Newspaper samadhi is very, very common, isn't it? You can't talk to him. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know who he is. He forgets everything. He's in newspaper samadhi, right? So we are supposed to go into japa samadhi. Right? We're supposed to make a similar shift that when we chant, now we have to turn everything off. Like if you look at your life, it's got so many buttons, you know. There's the children switch, the husband-wife switch, the job switch, the vacation switch, this weekend switch, the person I had a fight with yesterday switch. All these switches that can divert you from good japa. One by one, you need to turn them off before you begin chanting. Because if you don't turn them off, guess what happens? They creep into your japa. And so, my answer to the question is, how do I control my mind when I chant japa is turn all the switches off. And the reason your mind is active is because maybe there's one switch that you haven't turned off. Maybe you haven't turned off any switches. But if you internally turn them off, you will see you're not going to really be battling with your mind because that whole realm of your life is now off for the time being. It's very important. If we don't do that, we're always going to say, my mind, my mind, my mind. Right? Now, there's another thing we talked about yesterday, which is very important. And I was doing a little introductory work to this. And that's about experience is in the heart, and the mind is analytical, and the mind tends to take us out of the present moment. For example, have you ever been preoccupied with a conversation or preoccupied with thoughts, perhaps disturbing thoughts or thoughts of things which are important while you're eating? And by the time you finish your meal, you don't actually remember how it got eaten. Anyone have that experience? You look at your plate and you go, hey, who's been eating my prasadam? Did you take that samosa? No, Prabhu, you ate it. No, I didn't eat it. It's interesting, isn't it? So that's an experience of, or an example of, not being present. You're actually eating, but you're not aware that you're eating because in your mind you're thinking of something or you're having a conversation that's taking you out of the present. So when we're chanting and we're occupied in thoughts, often we go out of the present and we're not experiencing. Like yesterday I said, feel the mantra. A lot of times we're chanting and we're not feeling what we felt last night, right? Why are we feeling what we felt last night? That feeling's always there. It's just we weren't present to it. So there's a lot of interesting ideas about being present. And another example of not being present is to look at something but not actually see it. So they say in Buddhism, see what you're looking at, then you're present. So what does that mean? See what I'm looking at. Well, sometimes we might go into the temple and we'll say, Prabhu, did you see the deities for Mangalartik? And you say, yes. What were they wearing? I think it was it white and gold with a yellow garland and a black dhoti? Was that it this morning? Or was that last night? I mean, I was looking at the deity. I mean, Krishna is black, I remember that. And Radharani's white, but... So, a half hour we're looking, but maybe we didn't see, right? So it sounds funny to say, see what you're looking at. But what it means is, if you're seeing what you look at, then you're experiencing what you're looking at in the moment, as opposed to looking at it, but in your mind, you're somewhere else. So you're actually not seeing it because you're in your thoughts. So you really weren't at Mangalartik. You were somewhere else. At least you weren't seeing. See what you're looking at. Ladies know that often they speak to their husbands and their husbands don't hear what they say. But the sound was, was in the room. I mean, they actually heard it. But they didn't hear it. And then the wife will say, I asked you to do this last week. Why didn't you do it? And the husband will say, you never asked me. He'll say, I did ask you. I didn't hear you. You never asked me. But she did ask. It just didn't register. The sound was in the room, but somehow or other he didn't hear it. So hear what you listen to, see what you see, experience what you're experiencing. Now this gets very interesting because, as we just said, there's an experience to chanting which sometimes we don't have. And why don't we have the experience? Because we're floating around here, right? We're off somewhere. I don't know. Maybe you guys are in England. Were in England this morning while you were chanting. Worrying about all your friends, or the really nice. They have such nice prasadam in England. It's always got butter, right, and cheese and bread. Perfect prasadam if you have insomnia. Put you to sleep. Hour after breakfast, you're finished, right? Every brahmachari is snoring away, right? So they have really nice prasadam and amazing mangal sweets at Bhaktivedanta Manor, right? Yes? So maybe they're chanting japa thinking, this prasadam we're getting here is so simple and spicy, and where's the butter and where's the cheese, So they're Hare Krishna, butter, cheese, bread, paneer. Yes, it's possible. We know it's true, right? So we're not present now to the experience of the holy name, but we're present to the experience of butter on bread in London, because that's where we are in our mind. So we're not actually here. So that's what it means to be present. Present means to experience what's happening right now, in the moment. Okay, so I have a mantra. Would you like to hear it? It's a really good mantra. You're going to like this mantra. My realization is that if we're in our head when we're chanting, then we're not present. But if we're in our heart, we're praying, we're feeling, then we're present. So here's my mantra. Are you ready? 10, 9, 8, 7. Okay, it goes like this. You have to be out of your mind to chant Hare Krishna. You like that? You have to be out of your mind to chant Hare Krishna. Of course, we know devotees are a little crazy anyway, but that's not what I mean. I don't mean you have to be crazy. I mean you have to be out of here and you have to be in here, right? So this whole problem with I can't control my mind, nobody can control their mind. Don't even try. It's not even, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, how do you overcome the offensive inattention? He said, don't even try, you can't. It's right there in the Harinam Chintamani. Hey, that solves a lot of problems, doesn't it? He said, only by Krishna's mercy will you. But the point is, you don't want to battle with your mind. You just want to go out of your mind and go into your heart. So, we have this conversation. Many have heard this conversation. Srila Prabhupada, it's very difficult to control my mind when I chant. And Prabhupada said, what's the question of the mind? You just chant and you hear. So you don't need your mind. So, what I want you to understand from this discussion is that when your mind is wandering, you've lost your presence with the holy name. You've lost your connection with the prayer, with the feeling, with the presence. And the exercise last night was an exercise in presence. I said, feel it, because when you experience it, you're present. You're taking prasadam. Wow, this is so good. I can taste all the spices and the ghee, and you're relishing it. You are present with that samosa, right? The world could blow up, but you're there with your samosa. Who cares? This samosa, right? Isn't it? Prabhupada, they were, during the Pakistan war, they were dropping bombs, and Prabhupada was eating, like, kachoris or something, was it? Fried puris? And they said, you have to run and shelter. He said, let me finish my puris. He was present to his puris. That's all that mattered. So,